Demon Lord. I know how that feels. Having to find good subjects.
Really doesn't understand
The only subject is my dog and my army of cats.
now when he was initially open to the idea. Just when they were about to finalize the agreement, he started yelling nay, nay, over and over again. Olmandra came back several times to see if he would agree to the pact again, but all he would ever say was nay, because she couldn't understand what he wanted. Olmandra can't possibly see a resolution, so she's going to leave the rest for Danuske to figure out.
What?
Although she fully expects him to fail miserably. Danuske starts having a full-on panic attack because he thinks there's no way to get around this mess. But as he is walking through the halls trying to figure out what to do, he spots a bar sign and decides to head in to clear his head. The bartender gets him a warm towel to calm him down, and Danuske orders a drink while he sits down to think. He would like to work on the negotiations, but there's nothing he can do if the client refuses to negotiate. However, Danuske then realizes that Terius might not actually be refusing to negotiate after all. He has experienced a situation like this before where a client was constantly telling him no, but when he looked into the client's eyes, he could tell what he really meant, and both sides were eventually able to reach an agreement. He now knows what he needs to do, so he finishes his drink and heads outside to
do it, Danuske.
Negotiate. Meanwhile, Olmandra is back in the Demon Lord's throne room giving a report about her conversation with Terius, and it didn't lead to any meaningful breakthrough, so she doesn't think Danuske will be able to achieve anything.
Oh yeah, we need to siphon this.
Since he just arrived in this world today, but the Demon Lord still has faith in him. So he tells her to wait and see what Danuske can accomplish. She doesn't understand what the Demon Lord sees in Danuske, but she decides to go check up on him to see if he's alright, and when she does, she finds him in the process of stuffing several bags with hay. She asks him what he's doing, so he tells her that he intends to go have a good conversation with Terius. She tries to tell him that it's pointless since he's not willing to negotiate, but Danuske still thinks there's a chance. He just needs to look Terius in the eyes and convey his emotions properly, so the two of them can understand each other. Olmandra notices that Danuske looks a lot more confident than he did before, and without an ounce of fear this time, he walks into the meeting room to talk to Terius. The next morning, Olmandra comes into the meeting room to check if Danuske is still alive, but when she looks inside, all she finds is a room full of hay, and neither Danuske nor Terius in sight. At first, she thinks the negotiations must have failed, leading to a massive fight, but just then, Danuske comes in and tells her everything is fine. In that case, she demands to know why there's hay all over their sacred demon castle, and more importantly, she asks where Terius went. Danuske tells her that Terius is currently finalizing the pact agreement with the Demon Lord, but Olmandra can't believe Danuske managed to get him to agree in just one night. He explains that he simply took the time to get to know Terius well, and that made the negotiation process really easy. Olmandra had thought Terius was refusing to negotiate because he kept yelling nay over and over, but in reality, Terius thought negotiations were going really well. Danuske had experienced something like this before with an international client, and the client in question was really enthusiastic about saying no to him, so Danuske thought the negotiation was going to end in failure. But to his surprise, the man then reached out for a handshake, so he realized it was all a misunderstanding. The same thing applied to Terius, so Danuske did a little research into Minotaur culture and found out that Minotaurs always bring hay with them to act as their bed whenever they go to someone else's home. So all that time, he was just trying to ask for his hay. And when Danuske figured that out, there were no more problems with the negotiation. Now, Olmandra realizes that she had misunderstood Terius and left him in that room to sleep on the cold floor, so she feels really bad. But Terius tells her it's alright since it was an honest mistake and shakes her hand to show that there are no hard feelings. As Terius is leaving, the Demon Lord comes up to Danuske and Olmandra and asks Olmandra if she now understands why he wants to add Danuske to their ranks. Olmandra admits that Danuske really is skilled when it comes to negotiating, and since he passed the Demon Lord's test, the Demon Lord officially makes him one of his 4 generals and puts a bracelet on his arm as a symbol of his position. And as a sign of her new respect for Danuske, Olmandra formally introduces herself to him and says she looks forward to working with him as a new friend. Danuske is finally starting to settle into his role as one of the demon generals, and it's nice that he's got his own office and a supportive boss, but this place is still going to take some getting used to. Since he is officially one of the demon generals now, he thinks he should formally introduce himself to the others, so he heads to Sylphid's room and knocks on the door. To his surprise, a girl answers the door and asks what he wants, so Danuske tells her he's here to introduce himself to Sylphid. The girl then coldly tells him that she's Sylphid's assistant, and he's a very busy man, so she can't let Danuske disturb him. Denosuke is disappointed, but he knew he was bound to face some
Melon.
pushback from the other demon generals, so he decides to just come back later to try again. However, before
So
he
I
can
know.
leave, Olmundra comes running up to him because she has something important to say. The Demon Lord has another assignment for Denosuke, so Denosuke goes to meet with him immediately
Bing,
and is
bing,
informed of an agreement
bong.
he's working on. For the demon army to grow in strength, he needs the support of all the surrounding demi-human nations, and among all those nations, the Ogre tribe is particularly influential. They possess a military force equal to that of the demon army, and as a result, they could become a threat to the demon empire if they were to become hostile. That is why the demon lord wants to have a merger negotiation with them so they can combine their forces, but the ogres are notoriously difficult to negotiate with, so nothing has been decided on yet. However, with
So it
Denosuke on the
goes
case, the
diagonal
demon
then,
lord
does
is
it?
sure he will be able to reach an agreement with them, so he's granting him full authority on the matter. Denosuke is glad to see that the demon lord trusts him so much, but there's a real chance of him dying to the ogres if he goes alone, so Olmundra volunteers to escort him to the ogre tribe. However, before that, Denosuke says he wants to go meet with Gnome since she's in charge of the demi-human division of the demon army, and she might have some valuable information about the ogres. Olmundra thinks Denosuke is right, but she absolutely refuses to go anywhere near Gnome because she has generational beef with her. So instead, she says she'll go check on the carriages while Denosuke talks with Gnome.
What the hell?
Denosuke heads out into the training grounds where Gnome is holding her daily training session, and he is impressed with what he sees because not only are Gnome's men skilled in combat, but she also keeps their morale really high. Once training is done, she turns to address Denosuke and asks what he wants. Denosuke tells her he's here to ask if she knows anything about the Ogre tribe, and she doesn't know much, but she tells Denosuke that their leader, Ogre, is notoriously difficult to have a conversation with, so he's going to have a hard time negotiating with him. There's nothing she can really
Yeah,
do
that's
to
not
help
the
him on
right
this one, and
one.
she would never want to work
Oops.
on anything with Olmundra anyway, so she asks Denosuke to get her out of here. Denosuke didn't even realize Olmundra had been standing behind him, so he asks her why she's here and why she's so angry. Olmundra says she already finished checking the carriages, so she came to get Denosuke, since she was worried about him, but she can't contain herself after seeing Gnome, so the two start arguing, and Denosuke is starting to get worried about how much Olmundra and Gnome hate each other. Denosuke and Olmundra eventually arrive at the Ogre Castle, but before they could enter, they are stopped at the gate and told to wait until
I
Ogre
could take a
gives them
cauldron to the
permission
mountain
enter.
biome, but that would just be a waste of
Olmundra
iron.
thinks
I'm not
it's
going to do
ridiculous
that.
they are being kept outside so long, but Denosuke has seen this before and knows Ogre is just trying to use this to throw them off so they won't be able to negotiate. That's why it's important that they keep their cool, but Olmundra is on the verge of exploding in rage. Thankfully, before she could act out, Ogre's assistant comes out and tells the two that they may now enter, but as they walk in, Denosuke notices how scruffy Ogre's armor look. Eventually, they make it to Ogre's throne room and come face to face with Ogre himself. But when Olmundra tries to start the negotiations, he tells her to shut up. He doesn't care why they are here because he's never going to listen to what they have to say unless, of course, they came to surrender to him. In which case he might hear them out, but only if they agree to kill their chief, the Demon Lord. Olmundra can't believe the levels of bullshit she just heard from Ogre's mouth, so she's about to crash out right now. But Denosuke grabs her hand and tells her to calm down because a violent crash out is exactly what Ogre is hoping for. He then turns to Ogre, and in his most polite businessman voice, he says he and Olmundra are going outside to have a brief chat. Outside, Olmundra lets out all her rage and curses the very existence of Ogre for daring to say such a thing. She's fully prepared to go back in there and tear Ogre limb from limb, but Denosuke calms her down and tells her they can't react to his provocation because that's exactly what he wants. He's intentionally saying things to get them angry in hopes that they cause a scene so negotiations break down. That way he can avoid directly rejecting the negotiation and blame its failure on the two of them. Now that she knows what Ogre was trying to do, Olmundra decides to calm herself down, but she's still really frustrated by the fact that Ogre insulted the Demon Lord. To be honest, Denosuke is just as angry, but acting on that anger would only hurt their chances of success here, so they have to be careful about how they respond. With that said though, Ogre isn't willing to negotiate, so there's not much they can do at this point.
We gotta
Just
make
then,
a
the girl from before
vertical...
shows up, and she
Here's how you do
introduces
this.
herself
Okay,
as
so
Ogre's
there's a way to
daughter,
get power in the
Oruru.
nether, but you
She
have
knows
to
this
have a
may come off
vertical
as
water
rude, but she
wheel.
has a
Or
request to
fucking
make.
windmill,
So she
whatever.
asks for Denosuke and Olmundra's
This is a
help in
vertical
dethroning her
windmill. It's a
father.
special variant
She
of a
leads
windmill
Denosuke
that
and
allows you
Olmundra
to
to
have
an empty
mechanical
room and
power in the
explains that this
nether.
is the food cellar.
I haven't
And
done a
as they
lot of
can see, it has
experimenting
no
with it,
food.
but I do know how
The
it
ogre is known
works.
for its strength
It's kind
and
of
influence among
complicated
the
though. It's
demi-humans,
kind
but
of messy.
recently they've run into financial
You know,
trouble,
it is what it is,
and it has
though.
gotten
It's
so
all
bad
good.
that a
It's
lot
all
of their
good.
people are struggling to find food to eat. Denosuke had assumed something like this was going on because when they came in, he saw the terrible state of the ogre's equipment, along with the cold and empty feeling he got from the castle itself. This kind of situation usually occurs when large companies begin to decline. They make it seem like everything's going well, but on the inside, they are constantly on the brink of bankruptcy. That's exactly what's going on with the Ogre tribe, and Olulu believes that the only way to rebuild it is to rely on the demon army's help. However, her father refuses to listen to her, and on top of that, he is currently sick. They've been trying to keep this fact hidden, which is why they had Olmandra and Danuska wait outside while they prepared him for the meeting, but his condition just keeps getting worse, and Sigurd is going to pass away. If Ogier were to die with things as they are now, it would be the end of their tribe, so she pleads with Danuska to help her. Danuska says he understands her concerns, but he also scolds her for sharing such vital information. As the daughter of the chief, she needs to be more careful of the people she trusts, but Olulu can tell that Danuska is a good person. She's pretty confident in her ability to discern the nature of people, which is why she told him about the situation, and now she asks Danuska to help her save the Ogre tribe by marrying her. After hearing this, Danuska freaks out and Olmandra begins burning with rage, but Olulu is serious about her proposal. All the ogres in her tribe are as dumb as rocks.
God
so
damn.
the only way for Olulu to ensure the prosperity of the demon army is for a smart guy like Danuska to marry her and become the new chief.
What the hell?
Danuska tries to talk Olulu out of making any rash decisions, but Olulu is convinced this is the only way to save the ogre tribe. So she's willing to make their marriage official immediately, but Olmandra doesn't let that happen. Later that night, Danuska is sitting in his office and wondering how he's going to get himself out of this mess because Ogre refuses to negotiate with him, and Ogre wants to marry him. He can't afford to fail on his second assignment for the Demon Lord, so he decides
What the
to go
hell?
to the bar in
Holy
his head so
shit.
he can clear his thoughts. However, this time he's not
Go.
alone because Danuska's
Go,
imaginary
keep 'em
version of
coming,
Olmandra
Granny.
is sitting at the table next to him, arguing with the bartender about which is cooler, gorillas or lions. Realistically, a gorilla is moping the floor with a lion any day of the week, but Olmandra counters
Depends on the
saying
type of
lions are
gorilla.
cooler
If it's a
because a group
silverback,
of
then
lions is
definitely
called
it's
a
gonna mop
pride.
the floor with it.
As soon as Danuska hears this, he snaps out of his trance and he now has a foolproof idea of how to handle this.
Okay, so let me just give an example. We're gonna take this with us. Wait, no, we're not. Never mind.
For waking her up so
Just
early,
watch this, watch this,
but
watch
he
this.
needs her help so they can go do some negotiating. But for Danuska's plan to work, they need to go somewhere else first. And if all goes well, then Ogier is the one who will be begging for a negotiation meeting. 1 week later, Danuska and Olmandra are called into the chief's throne room,
Oh, wait, hang
just
on.
like Danuska had planned, and Ogier looks pretty mad. He just found out that all the
What the hell?
surrounding tribes
I don't
formed
have
an
space.
alliance
Are you
with the
fucking
demon
kidding
army
me?
over the past week, and he wants an explanation.
Okay, well,
A week
just
ago,
give me a
Danuska
sec.
told
I'll show
Olmandra
how
about
this
his
works.
plan
Just
to recruit the
wait.
smaller tribes first instead of trying to convince Ogier. It shouldn't be too hard because just like the Ogre tribe, the other tribes are struggling with a food shortage, so they can be swayed by the promise of support. Olmandra understood Danuska's plan, but she didn't expect it to
So
work
here's
so
how
well by
this
forcing
works.
Ogier into
We'll
negotiations.
just use this as an example. This is
Danuska's
perfect.
strategy was based on something he had to do when he was selling a
You have to
product
have
back on
8
Earth.
sails in
If
a
he tried to approach a
formation,
big
similar
company
to a
directly, he
windmill, just
usually
or
be
similar
rejected.
to a water
So he
wheel.
decided to
Or I
first
guess
market
it's
to
basically
all
the
the
same.
smaller companies and sell them his product, and eventually the big company would be forced to contact him and ask for the product as well so they wouldn't be left behind.
Okay, well,
Similarly, if all the surrounding demi-humans joined the demon army, then the prideful chief wouldn't let that go without a response. For now, Danuska plays dumb and acts like he simply offered to form an alliance with the smaller groups because they were struggling to survive and needed the support of the demon army. But that makes Ogier even angrier since he never agreed to any
What the fuck?
negotiations.
am I not doing
Everything's
this
going
right?
according to plan because now that Ogier has lost his cool, he is much more susceptible to Danuska's negotiation tactics. Danuska then starts explaining that the alliances weren't formed by him alone because he had help from Olulu. Ogier can't believe that his own daughter would betray him like this, but she tells him that it was necessary for the sake of their ogre tribe. The only way out of their current situation is to rely on the demon army's aid, and as much as he may not want to admit it, times have changed. He has grown old and is currently sick, so they need to join the demon army if they are going to survive. Just then, Danuska chimes in and offers an alternative to Ogier. Instead of joining the demon army, they could form an equal partnership. To be honest, Danuska just made that shit up because he hasn't changed anything about the deal. But if he says it's an equal partnership, then the proud ogre chief is bound to be more willing to accept. As expected, Ogier doesn't seem opposed to the idea, but he asks them to give him some time to think it over. A couple of days later, Olmandra comes running into Danuska's office to tell him the good news. She tells Danuska that Ogier has just agreed to the alliance with the demon army, and that's great news. But right now, Danuska has more important
We'll
things
deal with
to
that
worry
later.
about.
I know how to
Demon
do
Lord
it. I guess
told
you
him
just have to
pick
put it in
out
the
an
nether.
assistant
I don't
for
know.
himself. So he spent the past few days looking through applications to find the right person. Honestly, he wishes he could just pick Olmundra since she's so reliable, and Olmundra misunderstands this to be Danuska's way of proposing, so she gets a little embarrassed. Just then, there's another knock at the door, so Danuske goes to check who
What
it is
the
and finds
hell?
Olulu
Oh
there.
no.
She tells him she's here to act as a representative from the Ogre tribe for their alliance with the demon army, and she's incredibly grateful to him for his help since her father has become a lot more diplomatic ever since their encounter. She says she is willing to do anything to show her gratitude, and since she said anything, Danuske asks her if she would like to become his personal assistant. Olulu is more than happy to take the job, but Olmundra is jealous. So
Nah.
she refuses to look Danuske in the
Fucking
eye and
ogre
reminds herself
girl,
that they
bro.
are
What the
rivals,
fuck?
so she can't be
Holy
friends with her.
shit.
Danuske has no idea why she suddenly started acting so strange, but that aside, this has been a good month for him since the demon army has grown quite a bit. But whenever there's growth, there's also increased risk, so everyone needs to keep their guard up. A couple of days pass and Danuske is working in his office as usual when Lulu comes in and tells him she has reached an agreement with the bear tribe like he asked her to. So as long as he meets their conditions, they will support the demon army.
Okay,
Danuske is glad to
cool.
hear that things went well with the bear tribe.
Damn, I'm
but
down
there's
to one
something else
chest, bro.
Olulu
What
wants
the
to tell him.
fuck?
She heard that Danuske is going to be rewarded for all the hard work he has been putting in.
Look at
and
all
award
the
ceremony
iron,
is
bro.
going to
Look at
happen
how
soon.
beautiful that
So she'll
is.
tell him about
Oh
it
my
after his lunch break is
god.
over.
I'm gonna take this
Danuske
with
has
me.
no idea what he's
Just so
going
that
to
way
be
I can use
rewarded,
it.
but with how the demon lord treats him, he can be sure that it will be better than a pizza party. Just then, Olmundra comes into Danuske's office with some lunch for them to share as they always do. But while Danuske loves eating with Olmundra, he hates the fact that the only food available in the demon army is bland porridge. He understands that there are limitations to the logistics of feeding an entire army, but he still wishes he could at least have some meat to go with the porridge. Olmundra hears Danuske complaining, and she has the perfect solution, so if Danuske wants meat, then they are going to go get it from the source. Danuske really doesn't like the idea of going hunting just so he can eat some meat.
I say
That's
go
not
get
the
it, dude.
only reason
It's not
Olmundra
gonna be
brought him out
gamey
here.
or anything.
She
I mean,
actually
meat's meat,
received a
right? I don't
request
give a
from the
shit.
demi-human
If that
tribes
shit,
living
if that shit's
nearby,
got protein,
asking her
I'm
to
fucking eating it,
exterminate a
bitch. I'm
magical
fucking
beast
down.
that has been attacking them in this forest. So far, 5 orcs have been killed by this thing, and Danuske thinks that's terrible, but Olmundra sees it differently. It's perfectly natural for the weak to be eaten by the strong, and normally it would be the orc tribe's job to defend themselves from any threats like this. But the beast in question is far too strong for them to defeat, and Olmundra can't let the orc tribe be
I'm gonna let
slaughtered,
this grow.
so she agreed to
Just
handle
so that
it
way I
for
can
them.
see everything that I need.
Speaking of which,
Then we'll do it.
Olmundra notices some mushrooms growing under a tree, and from what she was told, all the orcs who got eaten were attacked while picking these mushrooms, since they are a valuable ingredient. Therefore, the magical beast must be camping somewhere around here. If they wait long enough, then it's sure to attack. Evidently, they didn't have to wait long since the boar shows up behind them almost immediately. So Olmundra tells Danuske
I'm
to
basically
run
just
for cover
grinding for
while she
fucking
handles
coal.
this.
9
She
stacks
jumps
is
into
gonna
the
take
air
a
and
while.
heel kicks the boar's face into the ground. But in retaliation, the boar starts using its horns to throw rocks at Olmundra, and although she can easily dodge them, Danuske can't, so he's freaking out. The
I'm
boar
gonna do
starts
4 in
smashing
the
through
other one.
trees and is heading straight
Just
for
pro tip here,
Danuske. But
never,
before he could get
under
hurt,
any
Olmundra
circumstances,
lands
do
a
you put
clean
hellfire
punch to the
dust or
boar's
anything
stomach.
flammable
From what he can see,
in a
it's
stoked
clear to
cauldron.
Danuske that Olmundra is
You
strong,
wanna know
but
why?
So far, none of her strikes have been fatal.
You'll find
It
out
wouldn't
why,
matter if this was
trust
just a
me.
regular fight,
I'm not
but
gonna
right now their
demonstrate,
goal
because
is
it
to hunt
ain't
this
good.
thing, so what she's lacking is killing power. The boar has sharp tusks to attack with, so a single mistake on Olmundra's end would be fatal. However, her blows only cause blunt force trauma, so if she's going to end this quickly, then Danuske thinks she needs a weapon. He was right about Olmundra's blows not being strong enough to kill this thing as she is now, but she has been holding back so far. She doesn't like using her true power because it takes a long time to recover from the effect, but she won't be able to kill this thing otherwise. The boar tries charging at her again, but this time Olmundra is able to stop it with one hand. She could easily kill it with a single punch right now, but that might ruin its meat, so instead, she picks it up and snaps its neck. Now that the boar is dead, Olmundra tells Danuske...
Just gonna
he can
back
eat
away
meat
in case
now,
that
but
didn't
honestly,
work.
Danuske's lost his appetite. They drag
Please.
the boar's body to the orc village, so they can
Okay,
show
good. It
the
looks like
villagers
whatever
that
I
the
did
boar has been
actually
dealt with.
worked.
All the
Thank
villagers are
goodness.
really
If you
grateful
put
for
it
what
in a
Olmundra
stoked
did,
cauldron,
as
let's
well as
just say that
impressed
it
that she
doesn't
was
go
able to
so
take it
great.
down on her
I'm
own.
gonna keep that redstone as
Olmundra is
far
really
away
enjoying
from
all
there
this
as
praise,
possible.
But that aside,
I think
it's
I'll
rare to get
pass.
so much meat, so Olmundra invites the entire village to share the boar with her. The villagers are all excited, but Danuske can't believe they are actually okay with eating boar meat when that thing was one evolution cycle away from being their next door neighbor. However, he's even more surprised when he hears Olmundra say she's going to cook the meat. He asks her if she's really serious about cooking. So Olmundra offers to leave him a taste of her
Salaryman
homemade
Kun makes a
delicacy.
good point. I mean, that
Danuske
basically is an
actually
orc,
getting
right? I
excited
mean,
since
shit.
Olmundra is making it sound
I mean,
so
kinda,
good.
you know,
But when he asks her
kinda.
how she plans to cook, she just chucks a fireball at it. The result is this lump of charred flesh, and you can tell by the look on Danusuke's face that this shit is straight trash. Olmandra tells him to just give it a try because it's better than it looks, but Danusuke takes a bite and it tastes just as bad as it looks. This shit tastes like someone poured hot tar in his mouth, and you'd honestly rather starve than have to suffer through another bite of this. Olmandra tells him it's rude to insult someone's cooking like that.
I don't know.
Danusuke
Sounds
tells
like
her
her
it's rude
cooking's
to
pretty
call what she
shit.
just did cooking. He has been enduring the culture shock of living in a new world so far, but this is too much for him to handle, so he asks if everyone can let him handle the cooking from now on. Once Danusuke is done cooking the meat, Olmandra takes one bite and realizes this actually tastes amazing, so she asks Danusuke what he did. He explains that first he soaked the pork in
Motherfucker.
water to get all the blood out, and then he
Fuck outta
slow
here.
roasted it over a fire
Where did he
to
steal that
remove
from?
all the excess
Where?
fat in there. And finally, adding it to
Oh,
his soup
I
helps
thought
get
it was
rid of
something
any
else.
bad smells. He offers to
He
teach the
stole it from
villagers
here,
if they
didn't
want
he?
to
Had
learn,
to
and
have.
the villagers are glad that one
Where?
of the
Where,
demon
where, where?
generals is being so thoughtful.
Okay, never mind. He
But
didn't steal
Olmandra
it from
doesn't
there.
think it's
He gets
necessary
to
for
live.
someone as high-ranking as Danusuke
He better
to
count
spend
his lucky
time teaching
stars because
villagers
he's
how
gonna
to
run
cook.
out.
Danusuke tells her she's wrong because his job is to improve the demon army, and a big step in the development of any civilization is their culinary advancement. It's natural for people who eat meat often to figure out different ways to improve the taste, but because meat is so rare here, no one can afford to experiment with it. In other words, this country is poor and lacking in knowledge. It sounds harsh when he puts it that way, but Olmandra can't argue since he's correct. This country is mostly barren, and compared to the surrounding nations, is pretty weak, but that's exactly why they have to work hard to make a change as part of the Big Four. Since they are done here, Olmandra suggests that they should return to the castle, but Danusuke doesn't think that's a good idea since it's already dark out. However, Olmandra tells him it won't be a problem since she can illuminate their path with this fireball. She is really proud of her magic prowess since it's an ability unique to demons, and Danusuke is quite impressed. It also makes sense why demi-humans who can't use magic train day in and out to become effective fighters, while demons like Olmandra can rely solely on their magic, but he thinks Olmandra could stand to improve her combat techniques a little. For instance, even though her attack power rises dramatically when she uses her true power to transform her body, it takes a while for her body to recover afterwards, so he suggests that she should bring a weapon with her to help with combat next time. He also suggests that she should wear armor that covers more of her body, but after he says this, Olmandra stops dead in her tracks and puts out her light. She understands that Danusuke may be right, but his focus on efficiency is insulting to her, so she's way too mad to be around him right now. She ditches Danusuke in the forest, and Danusuke is left wondering why she got so mad, but before that, he's almost guaranteed to get eaten if he stays out in this forest, so he runs back to the orc village for safety. The next morning, Danusuke meets with the Demon Lord to give a report on the mission, and the demon congratulates him on his success. But he heard that Olmandra returned last night, while Danusuke only arrived this morning while being escorted by the orcs, so he wants to know if something bad happened between him and Olmandra. Danusuke breaks down and says he's not worthy of being one of the demon army's generals. The Demon Lord tells him to calm down and explain what happened, so Danusuke tells him everything. The Demon Lord can tell that Danusuke inadvertently offended Olmandra, but what's important now is that they make amends for the sake of the demon army, so he officially orders Danusuke to find a way to make up with Olmandra. But that's easier said than done. He recalls how proud Olmandra was when she said that demons are the only ones who can use magic, but there has to be more to it than that, so he starts reading a demon history book to see if he can figure something out. He soon finds a chapter talking about how a toned physique is essential for a demon's magic power, which is why demons take great pride in their bodies and often wear extremely revealing clothes. Danusuke now understands why Olmandra got so upset, because when he told her that it would be more efficient to wear armor that covers her body more, he was basically rejecting her pride as a demon. But even if he knows the reason she got mad, he has no idea how he's going to repair their relationship. Meanwhile, over in the castle, Olulu has just finished chopping up the firewood for the day, and she's about to go handle her next task. But she is shocked to see a menacing wall of death in front of her. Olmandra is really upset about what happened with Danusuke, so when she sees Olulu, she runs to her, crying that Danusuke hates her and refuses to praise her body. Olulu has no idea what's going on at first, but after Olmandra explains what happened,
Nice. Some
she realizes where the
shovels.
misunderstanding might have come from. She tells Olmandra that as a human, Danusuke's values are a lot different from theirs.
Pre-diamond, if you could
In
get that many
particular,
shovels, that would be
Olulu knows that
amazing.
Danusuke doesn't think exposing
Assuming
her
you have a
body is
clay
good
source to
thing,
exploit
but
it with
Olmandra
anyways.
can't believe it since she's been exposing her body to him for weeks, and he never complained about it. Olulu explains that Danusuke probably just thought Olmandra was some kind of exhibitionist, so he never questioned it. Upon hearing this, Olmandra suddenly realizes that if Danusuke was uncomfortable with her exposed body, then all those gestures of bodily affection she had shown him probably did come off as some sort of deviant behavior. She's so embarrassed and angry at herself for ditching Danusuke in the forest that she starts smashing her face into the floor, but Olulu begs her to stop because the floor can't take much more of this. Olmundra asks Olulu for advice on what she should do now since she got
Still a
mad at
ways
Danusuke
away.
for no reason. So Olulu tells her about a discussion she had with him when she first became his assistant. He told Olulu that he wanted her to stay true to her desires no matter what because he wanted her to feel free to talk about any troubles she had so they could come to a solution together. Regardless of any misunderstandings, Olulu is sure Olmundra can make up with Danusuke as long as they talk it out. Danusuke and Olmundra eventually find each other in the castle's stairwell, and they've both got something really important to say, so Olmundra tells Danusuke that she's not a hoe, she just wanted him to compliment her body.
She's not a
At the same
hoe.
time, Danusuke tells her that he thinks her body is hot. They both take a moment to process what the other said, and since it seems like they are both on the same page, Danusuke apologizes to Olmundra.
So this gets to come back with us.
He
I'm
didn't
taking
know
a
much
tally.
about
I'm
demons
keeping
and
a
hadn't
keeping
realized
score
that
for
what
how
he
much iron I
said
get
would
at
be
that damn
insulting to
mountain
her.
biome.
Olmundra accepts his apology and also apologizes to Danusuke because it wasn't his fault that he didn't know about demon culture. And even if she was mad, she shouldn't have left him in the middle of the forest alone. Danusuke did nearly die because of that, so Olmundra is really guilty. But since he ended up being okay, Danusuke says he forgives her. He's glad they were able to make up, and now that they've gotten the chance to learn a little about one another, Danusuke thinks they can become great partners.
Poor, right?
Although he still doesn't realize that Olmundra interprets the word partner as a marriage proposal. Later on, the Demon Lord gathers all his subordinates because he has a special
8
announcement to make.
tallow? It's not
After
bad.
forming alliances with the various tribes, his demon army has grown far stronger than it
The
used
second
to
I
be.
get enough fucking
And this
fuel,
is
I'm
all thanks
leaving.
to the diligent work of his newest general, Danusuke. So in light of his achievements, the Demon Lord is presenting him with this magic stone. Danusuke feels greatly honored to receive such a valuable stone, but he cannot accept it because he didn't do the work alone. None of this would have been possible if he didn't have Olmundra by his side. So he walks up to her, gets down on one knee, and asks Olmundra to accept the stone with him. Olmundra is happy, but she freaks out that Danusuke is doing this in public with so many people watching. He's not aware of this, but presenting a magic stone to a girl is quite literally the definition of a marriage proposal in this world. So he just proposed to her in front of all the demon army leaders, and the only reason she didn't immediately accept is because she's embarrassed with everyone around. A couple of days later, Danusuke is called into a meeting with the Demon Lord, and he's terrified because he thinks he did something wrong. So as a preemptive measure, he begins apologizing and begs to keep his job. The Demon Lord is surprised by Danusuke's reaction and tells him he isn't in any kind of trouble. They literally held an award ceremony for him the other day because of how good he is at his job. With that said, the Demon Lord has something he wants to discuss with him. He asks Danusuke what he thinks of the current relationship between the demi-humans and the demons of the demon army. From what Danusuke has seen firsthand, it looks like the demi-humans feel inferior to the demons since only demons are capable of using magic. And that's exactly what the Demon Lord has been trying to address, so he asks Danusuke to find a way to make it so everyone can use magic, because that way the demi-humans will be able to stand next to the demons as equals. Danusuke thinks it's a good plan, but there's one major problem with it since Danusuke can't use magic in the first place. So how's he supposed to figure out a way to allow everyone use it? The Demon Lord realizes that it's a daunting task, but that's why he gifted Danusuke a magic stone. He gives Danusuke full authority to decide how he will use it to accomplish his mission. However, he won't be able to do it on his own, so the Demon Lord assigned a magic specialist to help.
Fuck off.
The specialist is Sylphid, and the Demon Lord assures Danusuke Sylphid is really good when it comes to magic. But Danusuke still needs to be a bit careful, because Sylphid is a major pain in the ass to deal with. Danusuke says he understands and leaves the Demon Lord's throne room to go find Sylphid, and as he does this, Olmundra is watching him from behind the railing. She's been spying on Danusuke any chance she gets for the past few days, partially because she's interested in finding out how his work is going, but also because she's still giddy with excitement from Danusuke's marriage proposal a few days ago. Danusuke soon arrives at Sylphid's room, so he knocks at the door, but the person who answers is Belinda, and she tells him that Sylphid isn't here right now, so he's going to have to come back later. She then tries to close the door on him, but Danusuke sticks his foot in the door and insists on coming in anyway. Olmundra saw all this happen, and she's starting to get upset that Danusuke would flirt with another woman after he already proposed to her. Meanwhile, inside Sylphid's room, Belinda tries convincing Danusuke to leave since Sylphid isn't here. But he's not buying that story since he knows Belinda is really Sylphid. Belinda tries to deny it, but Danusuke has two good reasons to believe that she's lying. First, he has memorized the list of all Demon Army officials, and there's no one named Belinda on payroll. And secondly, the Demon Lord already snitched on her and told Danusuke that she likes to disguise herself to get out of work. Sylphid has clearly been caught, so she admits that Danusuke is right about her, but he still doesn't understand why she would pretend to be her own assistant. Sylphid simply explains that if everyone knew her real identity, then they'd start giving her tons of work to do, and she hates work. Be that as it may, Danusuke has some work he needs to discuss with her, so he asks Sylphid if she can spare some time to talk about magic tools with him. However, Sylphid flat out refuses to do anything that requires effort, even if it's under direct orders from the Demon Lord. Besides, she already made something like that in the past, so she has no reason to recreate it now. Danusuke has no idea that Sylphid had tried making magic tools in the past, and since he seems pretty interested, she decides to let him see her invention. She pulls out an object and informs Danusuke that it is made of a mineral base that allows magic to move through it easily, with pieces of magic stone layered on top of it. With this setup, it can be used to cast all types of magic. And that sounds exactly like what Danusuke is looking for, so he asks Sylphid if he can have permission to mass produce it. Sylphid tells him he's free to do what he wants, but this prototype costs 50 million to make, so he's going to need one hell of a financial scheme to fund mass production. After all, the device requires high-level magic stones to be used in its construction, so of course it would be costly to make. Danusuke is still shocked after learning how expensive these things are, and he now understands why Sylphid never put these into production, but he simply can't let himself give up yet, so he asks her if it would be possible to reduce the number of spells the device can cast. From what Sylphid told him, the device requires high-level magic stones to allow it to cast several different types of magic, so he suggests limiting it to a single spell. Sylphid is intrigued because she had never thought of it that way, and after a little thinking, she confirms that limiting the device to one spell would significantly reduce the cost, since low-level magic stones could be used in production instead. She's really impressed that Danusuke was able to come up with that idea in such a short amount of time, and it just so happens that he has a magic stone on hand, so he asks Sylphid if this will work. Sylphid is starting to get invested in this idea, and since they already have all the necessary materials, she's ready to be in work right away. But she needs an assistant to help, so she drags Danusuke down into her basement, and she doesn't plan on letting him sleep all tonight. Meanwhile, outside Sylphid's room, Olmundra is starting to get suspicious and wonders what Danusuke could be doing in Sylphid's office with a woman so late at night. The next morning, we see Danusuke sitting on the basement floor, barely conscious due to a lack of sleep. Sylphid is equally sleep deprived, but she's also really excited because she managed to completely redesign her magic tool to cast a single spell. Now this thing can be mass-produced for a fraction of the cost of the old model, and it's all thanks to her genius. However, before they can begin mass production, they still need to test it, so she tells Danusuke that he's going to be the test subject. Danusuke pleads with her to at least give him some time to rest since he's on the verge of collapse, so Sylphid allows him to leave, but she says she's only giving him a 1-hour break before he comes back so they can start testing this thing. As Danusuke heads back to the front door, he's about to open it, but before he could do anything, Olmundra barges in and demands to know what Danusuke has been doing all night. Olmundra's actions led to Danusuke getting knocked out, so she gets on her knees and tries to shake him until he wakes up, but all the shaking is just making him dizzy. Just then, Sylphid comes out of the basement, and she's wearing her usual outfit, so Olmundra won't realize that she was the woman from before. Olmundra is starting to question if what she saw earlier was right, but all of a sudden, Olmundra's assistant Lilim and Olulu enter the room as well because there's a huge emergency. A flock of Asiato birds has just attacked a few villages, and if nothing is done soon, then those villages will be destroyed. Asiato birds are large flightless birds that are known for their vicious nature, and they are so much of a threat that the Demon Lord has ordered that they do whatever it takes to drive those birds away. That's why Lilim came looking for Olmundra, since she's the only person capable of dealing with such a large flock. As she's being dragged away, Olmundra expresses her disappointment since she wants to spend time with Danusuke, but Sylphid sees this as the perfect opportunity to test out the new magic device, so she intends to bring Danusuke out to the battlefield. Once they are outside, Danusuke tells the locals to stand back a bit since what they are about to do might be dangerous. Sylphid sets the magic stone to cast a simple fire magic spell and hands it over to Danusuke so he can give it a try. Before that, Danusuke asks her if this thing has any safety features, but Sylphid assures him that even if it explodes,
no safety
Danusuke
features.
will only lose an arm. But that doesn't make him feel any better. He decides to test it out anyway despite the risks, so as the flock of Asiato birds approaches, Sylphid instructs him to start channeling power from the device. It makes a strange sound when Danusuke powers it up, but Sylphid tells him that's just how it operates. Now she wants Danusuke to imagine that the device is an extension of his own body, and let the energy flow until it accumulates in his right hand. Danusuke follows her instructions, and before long he has formed a fireball in his hand. Denosuke is amazed that he was actually able to use magic, and since the first phase was a success, Sylphid tells him to begin attacking the birds. Denosuke isn't sure if this will work, but he throws a fireball at one of the birds anyway, and it obliterates it. Slifer encourages him to keep going until he has taken care of all the birds. So Denosuke continuously chucks fireball after fireball, and for the first time since he came to this world, he feels like he's really strong enough to win a fight. However, that feeling of power is short-lived because in the next moment, the magic device burns out, so he can no longer use magic. One of the birds closes in on Denosuke and is about to kill him, but before that could happen, Sylphid raises a barrier around him. Denosuke tries using the device again, but this time, it just seems to be slowly attracting the birds instead of allowing Denosuke to use magic. Slifer takes care of the birds that were coming after Denosuke, and then she asks him why he isn't using the device to cast magic anymore, so he shows her the crystal, and it's clearly been overloaded. It looks like low-level magic crystal aren't enough to maintain the device after all, so this experiment is a failure. For now, they did manage to drive the birds away, so the villagers celebrate by making a pot of stew with the bird meat. While Denosuke is getting a bowl of stew, Sylphid is over by the tree, playing with one of the demi-human children.
Okay,
Denosuke
cool,
comes
we
over
have
and expresses his
we have
surprise
the
because he was
goods.
under the impression that all demi-humans were strong, but he had no idea that some of them were this weak. Sylphid agrees with him, but even though they are weak, demi-humans like them are still very kind, and it reminds her a bit of her past. Sylphid was born into a merchant family of elves, but things went wrong and she ended up getting kicked out. She then lived as
Okay,
a
cool.
wanderer
I'll
for
see
a
y'all
while
tomorrow.
until
Boo back.
she was
I
welcomed
did what I
into a
needed to
village of
do. We got our
demi-humans.
stuff.
The demi-humans were extremely kind to her, but